Today we are going to learn about 7th chords. I'm going to do my best to approach this video for a beginner who might be watching, but if at any point you do get confused, you could go and watch my video on triads and easy chord theory just to get a little more familiar with the basics. I will link that video in the description below, and then you could come back and watch this one. But anyway, moving forward, there are two parts to a chord, the root and the chord quality. First, let's make sure we know exactly what that means. So let's take a random chord name. For instance, C major 7. So this is a shorthand symbol for major 7. A triangle 7 is the same thing as C major 7, okay? Now the root of the chord is always that note name that is at the very beginning of the chord name. For instance, in this chord it's the C, okay? So C is the root note, and major 7 is the chord quality, okay? Now, don't forget to also include any sharps or flats that might be next to that first note name. For instance, if the chord were C sharp major 7, right, what would be the root note? The root note would be C sharp, because C sharp is the full name of that note, because C sharp is a different note than the note C. So C sharp is the root, and major 7 is the chord quality. So basically, if you want to find the root note of a chord, you're just going to look at the very first letter in the chord name, and then any sharp or flat that might be next to that letter. Okay, if the chord were A flat 7 sharp 11, what would be the root? The root note would be A flat, right? And then 7 sharp 11 is the chord quality. So even though there's a sharp there, we ignore that. That's still part of the chord quality. So the root note is always just going to be the very first letter and any sharp or flat that's right next to that letter. Any other sharps or flats in the chord name, like this sharp, for instance, that's part of the chord quality, okay? If we had the chord B flat minor 7, okay, what would be the root note? The root is the B flat, okay? So this is the root, B flat, and then minor 7 is the chord quality, okay? So see that flat is part of the root, right? The note, that is a note, B flat. It's different from B, okay? So B flat is the root, minor 7 is the chord quality. If the chord were just B minor 7, what would be the root note? The root note would just be B, and minor 7 would be the chord quality. Okay, last one, D minor 7 flat 5. What is the root note? The root note is just D, right? And then minor 7 flat 5 is the chord quality. Got it? Now all chords have what I like to call formulas, so I'm going to write out the formulas for our 7th chords. So our 7th chords are all built from these formulas, and they're built from the major scale of the root note of the chord. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Let me break it down for you. So let's say we are trying to figure out the notes in a C major 7 chord, okay? So our chord is C major, remember major shorthand is a triangle, C major 7, okay? So first things first, we're going to think about the major scale of the root note. Okay, so what is the root note? The root note is C, right? So we're going to think about a C major scale. So I'm just going to write one out right here, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Okay? Then I'm going to number the scale. So I'm going to sort of assign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I'm thinking of the scale as sort of like scale degrees, okay? So assigning each note in the scale a number. And then I'm just going to plug in these notes that are in the scale according to the numbers into this formula. So let's first look at what is the major 7 formula, okay? Because the chord quality is major 7, right? So major 7, here's our major 7 up here, right? And the formula for major 7 is 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so I'm just going to write that first. So we have 1, 3, 5, and 7, okay? So what is the 1, the first note, or the 1 in my C major scale? Well, I'm going to look for the note number 1. Ah, it's right there, right? So C. So the first scale degree is C, so 1. Then what about the 3? What's the 3? The 3 is, can you find it? It's E, right? So C, E. Okay, what about the 5th degree? Which note is the 5th scale degree in the C major scale? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's G, right? So G. And then the 7th degree is B, right? So C, E, G, and B. So that means that if you play these four notes, C, E, G, and B, in any order on any instrument, doesn't matter if you're playing piano, guitar, ukulele, whatever, if you play those four notes together, you are playing a C major 7 chord. And it would sound like this. C, E, G, B, C major 7. Let's do another major 7 chord. So let's do G major 7, okay? So G major 7, all right? So first things first, I'm gonna think, what is the root note of this chord? The root note is G, right? G is the root, and major 7 is the chord quality. So first things first, I'm going to write out my G major scale, okay? So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, okay? Then I'm going to number my scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? Then I'm going to plug in the major 7 formula into this scale, okay? So what is the major 7 formula again? 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? So 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so what would those notes be? So the 1 would be G, right? Because G is the first degree in this G major scale, so G is the 1. What about the 3? What's the third degree? Is B, right? So G, B. Okay, what about the 5th degree? What is the 5th note in our G major scale? 5th note is D, right? And then what is the 7th degree? This one's a little bit trickier, but don't overthink it. It's just F sharp, okay? So we don't alter it in any way because it just says the 7th, right? And the 7th is an F sharp, right? So that is your G major 7 chord, G, B, D, and F sharp. So if you play those four notes in any order on any instrument, you will be playing a G major 7 chord. This is what it sounds like. G, B, D, F sharp. And you can kind of hear how it sounds similar to the C major 7 chord, right? Because any major 7 chord is going to have the same sound, if you will, because the distance between each of the notes is the same. So listen, here's what the C major 7 chord sounds like. Major 7. Okay, and then here's our G major 7. Major 7. So these chords are starting in different places, but still has the same sound to it. This is because the distance between each of the notes is the same. What I mean by that is, if we were to analyze, okay, look at the first two notes in the C major 7 chord, are C and E, right? So how many half steps is E away from C? So I'm starting on C, I'm moving up 1, 2, 3, 4, moving up 4 half steps, right? So the distance from C to E is 4 half steps. So now let's look at the first two notes in our G major 7 chord. So G, right, to B. These are the first two notes in G major 7, or G and B. Okay, so I have, starting on G, moving up 1, 2, 3, 4. Aha! Again, it's 4 half steps. And that the distance between each of the notes is the same in any major 7 chord. So that's why they sort of sound the same. Well, they don't sort of, they definitely sound the same, because that relationship between the notes is the same distance. Cool. Now let's move on to the dominant 7 chord. If you've ever seen a chord named like C7, right, or G7, or F7, or F sharp 7, any note that says one, it's just the note name and then just the number 7. The real name for this chord is actually C dominant 7, but we just call it C7 for short, okay? So C7 is the same thing as C dominant 7, okay? So let's figure out the notes in a C dominant 7 chord, or a C7 chord. So first things first, we're going to, well, what's the root note of this chord? The root note is C, right? Dominant 7 is the chord quality, but C is the root note. Okay, so first I'm just going to write out a C major scale, okay? C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, right? And then remember what I'm going to do? I'm going to number that scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to look for the dominant 7 formula, right? What's the formula for dominant 7? It's 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay, so I'll write that out. So we've got 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay, let's plug the notes into the formula. Okay, so what is the first degree of a C major scale? It's just a C, right? Nice and easy. What about the third degree? What's the third? It's E, right? Okay, what is the fifth degree? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's G, right? Okay. What is the flat 7? All right, so this is where it gets a little bit trickier, because you might say, hey, wait, I don't see a flat 7 here. But there is a 7, right? So we're going to find the 7th. So what's the 7th? It's a B, right? But this formula is telling us we need to flatten that 7th. So we're going to have a B flat, okay? Whoa, I cannot write, well, that was a really weird looking B. B, well, that's also a weird looking B, but you get what I'm trying to do. So B flat, okay? So these are the notes in our C dominant 7 chord, okay? So B flat is our flattened 7 because a normal 7 is B, but if we flatten the 7th degree, so if we flatten that B, it turns into a B flat, okay? So these are the notes in our C dominant 7 chords, C, E, G, and B flat. And again, if you play just those 4 notes in any order on any instrument, you will be playing a C dominant 7 chord or a C7 chord. Okay, so let's listen to what that sounds like. C, E, G, B flat. Cool. Okay, now let's figure out the notes in a G7 chord, okay? So G7. So again, we're going to write out our G major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. Okay. And what was that dominant 7 formula again? 1, 3, 5, flat 7, right? So 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay. Interesting. So what would these notes be? Well, you tell me. So what's the 1? The 1 is G. Oh, I forgot to number the scale. That might help you out a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So the first degree in a G major scale is G, right? It's pretty straightforward. What about the third? G, A, B, right? B is the third degree. What about the 5? D, right? What about the flat 7? All right, this one's a little tricky. Okay, so what is the normal 7? So not a flat 7, but just the normal 7. Normal 7 is an F sharp, right? Okay, so this is telling us we need to flatten an F sharp. So what does an F sharp turn into when you flatten it? Do you know? It turns into an F natural, okay? Here, you can see on the keyboard, here's my F sharp. And if I flatten the F sharp, if you flatten any note, you just move it down a half step. So if I were to move this note down a half step, it goes to the F natural. So that's why if we flatten an F sharp, it becomes F natural. So F natural. And there you have it. These are the notes in our G dominant 7 chord. So G, B, D, and F. If you play those notes any order, any instrument, you'll be playing a G7 or G dominant 7 chord. So let's listen to what that sounds like. So G, B, D, F, dominant 7. And you might be able to hear that the dominant 7 chord has a sort of sound to it as well, just the same way a major 7 chord has a sound. For instance, this was our C dominant 7 chord, right? Dominant 7. Okay. Then here's our G dominant 7 chord. Dominant 7. Okay. So da 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 da. And actually, a really good exercise is to practice singing these different notes in these types of chords, because it's good to sort of have an understanding of just the sound of all these different types of chords in your head. What I like to sing for major 7 chords is, this is a major 7, right? And then I'll go, this is a dominant 7, okay? This is a major 7, this is the dominant 7. So good things to practice singing, starting on every single note, not just those 2, but for the sake of this video, we're just doing only a few root note examples. Okay, we'll do one more dominant 7 chord. Let's do a D flat 7, okay? So D flat 7 chord, or D flat dominant 7, okay? And so first let's write out our D flat major scale, okay? D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, okay? And then I'm gonna number my scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so I'm going to write down the formula for a dominant 7 chord. So that's 1, 3, 5, and flat 7, right? Then let's plug in the notes into the numbers. Okay, so what's the 1? The 1 is D flat, right? D flat. What about the 3? What's the third degree? F, right? D flat, E flat, F. So F is the third degree. What about the 5th degree? Well, it's A flat, right? A flat, okay. So we have D flat, F, A flat, and then what's the flattened 7th? What do you think it is? C flat, right? Because the 7th is a C natural, C is the 7th, and we have to flatten that, so it turns into C flat, okay? And yes, C flat is a real note. If you think it's not a real note, I have a whole video for you to watch about something called enharmonic equivalence, which I will link in the description below, okay? So D flat, F, A flat, and C flat. These are the notes in our D flat 7 or D flat dominant 7 chord. Let's listen to it. D flat, F, A flat, C flat, okay? And remember, C flat, the note C flat is just the same as the note B, right? They're enharmonic equivalents because here's C, and if you flatten a C, it moves down a half step, it's the same as the note B. So this is our C flat. So we have D flat, F, A flat, C flat. This is a dominant 7, D flat 7 chord. Nice. Okay, now let's look at a minor 7 chord, okay? So let's just start with a C minor 7 chord. And you know, sometimes you might see it written like C lowercase m7, or sometimes there's C and then a minus symbol and then 7. Those both mean C minor 7, okay? So first things first, we're going to, what's the root note of this chord? It's a C, right? So we're going to look at a C major scale, okay? So C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. It's our good friend C major. And we're going to number our scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so what is the formula for a minor 7th chord? Well, let's look it up. It's 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. I'm going to write that here. 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay, so let's plug in the notes into the numbers. Okay, so what is the 1? The first degree of our C major scale is a C, right? Nice and easy. Okay, what about a flat 3? So what's the third degree? Third degree is E, right? So it's going to be E flat because we're going to just flatten that third. Does that make sense? So it's going to be E flat. Okay, what is the 5th degree? The 5th degree is G, right? So just good old G. And what about flat 7? Well, what's the 7th? The 7th is B. Then we flatten it, so it becomes B flat. And voila, these are the notes in our C minor 7 chord. C, E flat, G, and B flat. So let's listen. C, E flat, G, B flat. This is a minor 7th. That's what I like to sing with it. This is a minor 7th. Cool? All these 7th chords are so pretty, aren't they? All right, so let's look at another one. Let's look at a G minor 7 chord. So G minor 7, okay? So I'm going to write out my G major scale, okay? G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. And I know I'm using the same scales over and over again, but that's because I want you to sort of see the patterns and sort of recognize it. I think that's a good thing to do. So here's my G major scale. I'm going to number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right. Then what is the minor 7 formula? Minor 7, it's 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7, right? So 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay. So let's plug in these notes into the numbers. So what's the 1? What's the 1 in G major? It's just a G, right? What about a flat 3? All right, well, what's the 3? 3 is B, so it's going to be B flat. B flat. Okay, what about the 5? 5 is going to be D, right? D, okay, and then what about the flat 7? Okay, again, we had it before in our dominant 7, but it's going to be the F natural, right? Because the F sharp, if we flatten it, becomes F natural, right? So the notes are G, B flat, D, and F. These are the notes in our G minor 7 chord, okay? So let's listen to what it sounds like. G, B flat, D, F. for C minor 7. This is a minor 7. This is a minor 7. Cool. Okay, so just for the sake of craziness, let's look at a C flat minor 7 chord, okay? So C flat minor 7. First, we're going to look at the root note, right? So what's the root note? The root note is C flat, okay? Now I'm going to write out a C flat major scale. So that's C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, and B flat. And literally every single note in your C flat major scale is flattened, okay? And let's number it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so let's look at the minor 7 formula. What's the minor 7 formula? It's 1, flat 3, right? 5 and flat 7, okay? And now let's plug in these notes. So what's the 1? The 1 is C flat, right? Okay, what is the flat 3? All right, this is where it gets a little weird, and that's why I wanted to just show you one weird example so that you could see what happens in these scenarios. Okay, flat 3, well, the third degree is an E flat, so what happens if we flatten an E flat? Oh gosh. Well, this is what we call an E double flat. So yes, that is a real thing, E double flat, and that is the correct thing to call it. Okay, C flat, E double flat. What about the 5th degree? Okay, 5th degree is G flat. Okay, so G flat. Okay, and what about the flat 7? Okay, well, normal 7 is just B flat, so we need to flatten a B flat. So that becomes, what does that become? Do you have any ideas? It's a B double flat, right? Because we had a B flat, then we have to flatten the B flat, becomes B double flat. Okay, so pretty crazy. Let's look at these notes visually on the piano. So we have C flat. So what's C flat? C flat is the enharmonic equivalent of the note B. Okay, so here's my C flat. And then I have E double flat. Okay, so let's find, here's my E, right? And then I'm gonna double flatten it. So E flat, E double flat. So E double flat and the note D are the same note, okay? So I have C flat, E double flat, okay? Then the next note is a G flat, right? So where's my G flat? It's right here, right? So C flat, E double flat, G flat. And then I have a B double flat. Okay, so where is the B double flat note? Well, so here's B flat, right? Okay, and then if I flatten a B flat, it goes to this note, which is A, right? Because this A and B double flat are enharmonic equivalents. So this is a C flat minor 7 chord, okay? C flat, E double flat, G flat, B double flat. This is a minor 7. Cool. So now let's look at the half-diminished chords, okay? So we're going to first look at a C half-diminished 7 chord, okay? So one very common symbol for it is C, and then a little circle with a slash through it like that, and then the number 7, okay? So if you ever see this, it means C half-diminished 7, okay? So another way this could be written is C minor 7 flat 5. That's another way to write out a C half-diminished. And the reason why it's C minor 7 flat 5 is, well, if you just imagined C minor 7, so if you ignored that flat 5, what's the formula for a minor 7 chord? It's 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7, right? But what's the formula for a half-diminished chord? It's 1, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7. What is the difference between the minor 7 formula and the half-diminished formula? Tell me, what's the difference between these two formulas? They both have a 1, right? They both have a flat 3. Ah, there's a difference between here. This one has a normal 5, and this one has a flat 5, and they both have a flat 7. So the only difference between these two is that the half-diminished 7 has a flat 5, and the minor 7 does not. So that's why half-diminished can also be called a minor 7 flat 5, because it's the same thing as a minor 7 chord with a flattened 5th. So C minor 7 flat 5, another name for C half-diminished. Got it? So let's figure out the notes in a C half-diminished 7 chord. So what's the root note? The root note is C, right? So we're going to look at our C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And we're going to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay? And let's write out the formula. For half-diminished, we have 1, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7. Cool. All right, so what's the 1? The 1 is C, right? What about the flattened third? Flattened third is E flat, right? What about the flattened fifth? Well, the fifth is G, right? So it's going to be G flat. And what about the flattened seventh? It's going to be B flat. All right, well, there you go. C, E flat, G flat, B flat. That's our C half diminished 7 chord. If we play those 4 notes in any order on any instrument, we are playing a C half diminished 7 chord. So let's listen to what it sounds like. We have C, E flat, G flat, B flat. And for this one, I usually sing half diminished 7. Now let's look at a G half diminished 7 chord. So G half diminished 7 or G minor 7 flat 5, right? Those would be the 2 different ways I could see those written. All right, so first what's the root note? The root note is G, so let me write out my G major scale. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, okay? And I'm gonna number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? Okay, then what's the formula? The formula is 1, well, this is for half diminished 7, right? It's 1, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7, right? Okay, so let's plug in the notes. What's the 1? 1 is G. It's the flat third, B flat, right? What's the flat 5? D flat, right? And what's the flat 7? Okay, it's well, F sharp, it becomes F natural, right? When we flatten an F sharp, it becomes F natural. So G, B flat, D flat, and F. Let's listen to what that sounds like, okay? So G, B flat, D flat, F, half diminished 7. Cool. All right, only 2 more chord types left. So now let's look at the fully diminished 7 chord. Okay, so let's look at a C diminished 7, okay? So C diminished 7. And a shorthand for diminished is just a little circle. So half diminished, it's a circle with a slash through it, and fully diminished is just a circle. So C diminished 7. And we usually refer to it as C diminished 7, not C fully diminished 7, but it's the same thing. So fully diminished and diminished are the same. Half diminished is a different type of thing, okay? So C diminished 7, same thing as C fully diminished 7. So C diminished 7. First, what's the root note? The root note is C, right? So we're going to write out our C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Okay, now let's number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, what is the formula for a fully diminished chord? It is 1, flat 3, flat 5, right? And then double flat 7, right? Double flat 7. Wow, okay, so getting pretty serious here. So what is the 1? The 1 would be C, right? What's the flat 3? E flat, right? Okay, what is the flat 5? G flat, right? What is the double flat 7? All right, well, let's stop and figure this out. So what's the 7? The 7 is just B. And if we flatten a B 2 times, it is B double flat. So this is going to be B double flat. Got it? And these would be the correct note names for the notes in this chord, okay? So the notes in a C diminished 7, no matter what instrument, no matter what order, are C, E flat, G flat, and B double flat, okay? So we have C, E flat, G flat, and then B double flat is the same thing as the note A, right? So here's B, B flat, A, right? So that's our fully diminished 7. Fully diminished 7, right? Cool. Let's look at a G diminished 7 now, okay? G diminished 7. So let's first write out our G major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, okay? We're going to number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay? The formula for a fully diminished is 1, flat 3, flat 5, and double flat 7, okay? So now let's plug in the notes into the formula. So what's the 1? The 1 is G, right? What's the flat 3? Here's the 3 is B, so it's B flat, right? What's the flat 5? That's supposed to be a flat. Okay, what's the flat 5? Well, 5 is the D, right? So it's going to be D flat. Okay, and what's the double flat 7? Okay, well, the normal 7 is F sharp, and if we double flatten an F sharp, well, let's see on the piano. So here's my F sharp. If I flatten it 2 times, so if I flatten it once first, it just becomes an F natural. If I flatten it again, it becomes this note right here, which is an F flat, okay? It's also the same as an E, but we're gonna call it F flat, okay? And how come we call it an F flat and not an E, technically? Look, if you were to refer to this as an E instead of an F flat to another musician, they would know what you mean. Or if you wrote in the note E instead of the note F flat on a piece of music, any professional musician would know, you know, okay, they know they're the same note, so it doesn't matter. But technically, if you want to know the exact technical correct note name to call it, you would refer to it as an F flat instead of an E, okay? Because as you can see, F flat, here's F, F flat, and E. It's the same note. It's the same pitch, but just 2 different note names, okay? These are the notes G, B flat, D flat, and F flat. Let's listen to them, okay? So we have G, B flat, D flat, F flat, fully diminished 7. There you go. And last but not least, we have the minor major 7 chord, okay? So the minor major 7, first let's look at a C minor major 7, okay? Sometimes you're going to see it written like this, C minor major 7, okay? That would be one way, like shorthand way it could be written out, okay? So let's figure out what this C minor major 7 chord is, or what the notes are in it. So first, what's the root? The root is C, right? So we're going to write out our C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, right? Okay. And I'm going to number it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay? Now, what is the formula for a minor major 7 chord? It is 1, flat 3, 5, and 7, okay? So let's plug the notes into the formula. So what's the 1? The 1 is C. What's the flat 3? Flat 3 is E flat, right? What is the 5? The 5 is G, right? And what's the 7? The 7 is B. All right, and there you have it. That is our C minor major 7 chord. So let's listen to it. Minor major 7. Now, why is it called a minor major 7 chord? I just want us to sort of look at this really quickly, okay? So when there's a non-flattened 7, so if you just see a normal old 7 and you don't see a flat 7 in one of the formulas, that is in what we would call a major 7th. And what I'm talking about is the interval between the root note and that 7th note is a major 7 interval, okay? So for instance, from the note C to the note B, that's a major 7 interval. Now, if we have a flattened 7th, that suddenly becomes a minor 7th interval. For instance, the note from C to B flat, that would be a minor 7th interval. So if you look at the C minor major 7 chord, so the C minor chord, so if I were to just play a C minor triad, and again, if you don't know about triads, go watch my video about triads. I'm going to link it below. But a C minor triad is C, E flat, and G, okay? So that's what we call, these are the notes in a C minor chord, okay? This is my minor triad. And then, so if I just take a minor triad and then I pop a major 7th note on top of it, which is my B, see? So I've got a minor triad and then I'm just popping that major 7th note, which is the B, or the 7th, right? It's not a B flat, it's a B, so it's a major 7th on top. That's what we get when we have a minor major 7th. So it's literally in the name of the chord, minor, it's like a C minor, right? And then with a major 7th, right? C minor, major 7th. Got it? And actually another name for a dominant 7 chord is a major minor chord. So not minor major, but major minor 7th chord. Major minor 7th, okay? That's another name for dominant 7. Because look, the 1, 3, 5, that's my major triad, right? C, E, and G, that's a C major chord. So it's a major triad with a minor 7th added to it with a, see that B flat. So major triad with a minor 7th, so that's why it's a major minor 7th. This one is a minor major 7th. This is almost always referred to as a dominant 7 chord Yeah, it's what you're gonna, or just a 7 chord. You're rarely gonna hear it referred to as a major minor 7th chord, but if it's referred to as major minor 7th, you can see how literal that name is, right? Cool. Okay, and last but not least, let's just look at a G minor major 7th chord, okay? So G minor major 7th chord, okay? So G major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. I'm gonna number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay? What's the formula? The formula for a minor major 7th chord is 1, flat 3, 5, and 7, okay? Right? Minor triad with a major 7th on top, okay? So what's the 1? The 1 is G. What's the flat 3? B flat. What's the 5th? D. And what's the 7th? 7th is F sharp, right? We're not altering that 7th. It's not flat 7, it's just normal at 7. The normal 7 is an F sharp. So, yes, in this chord it is true we have a flat and a sharp all in one chord name. That is totally possible and valid. Okay, so we have G, B flat, D, and F sharp, okay? G, B flat, D, F sharp. There is our G minor major 7 chord. And you did it. We got through all of the 7 chords just now. So hopefully this made sense. I do have worksheets that you can practice more of these 7th chords. And you can download the PDF worksheets in a link in the description below. I recommend doing that because it definitely helps to reinforce what we learned in this video, and also practicing the notes in these types of chords, in with other root notes, not just C and G. For the sake of time, I just wanted to stick to just chords that started with the note C and the note G. But in the worksheets, we break it down into chords that start with all kinds of different root notes. So I strongly recommend checking those out. And I have many other music theory worksheets as well, chord charts, all kinds of fun stuff. So check it out. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe and turn on those bell notifications so you can find out when I post my next video. I post a video a week, and I would love to have you here to check them out. And don't forget to leave a comment because it also really helps me out a lot. And let me know if you liked this video, if you had any questions about it, maybe what is your favorite type of 7th chord? Which one do you find the most beautiful? I think they're all beautiful. But I think my favorite one is a major 7th chord, just purely based on sound. It's so beautiful, but I do also like diminished 7 chords because they're really cool. But they're all cool. But what's your favorite type of 7th chord? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you guys again so much for watching. If you want to practice and reinforce what we learned here, don't forget to check out those printable PDF worksheets I have in the description below, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.